Welcome to Lantern and Olive. Tonight, a calm retelling from Ithaca, told softly, so you can drift off whenever you like. Settle in now, wherever you are. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. The fire is low, its embers glowing warm and steady. Outside, the wind moves gently through olive leaves, carrying the scent of wild thyme from the hills. The sea whispers in the distance, its rhythm as old as sleep itself. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to remember. Only this story, unfolding slowly, like waves finding their way to shore. And so we begin. The Princess and the Shipwrecked Man. In the kingdom of the Phaeacians, on the island called Scheria, there lived a princess named Nausicaa. She was the daughter of King Alcinous and Queen Arete. The palace stood white against the hills, surrounded by orchards of pear and apple and olive. The harbor below held dark-hulled ships. The air always carried the scent of salt and ripe fruit. Nausicaa was young, but she carried herself with the steady composure of someone older. She had her mother's practical mind and her father's easy warmth. The people of the palace loved her. The handmaidens who attended her were more companions than servants. One night, the goddess Athena visited the princess in a dream. She came in the form of a friend, a girl Nausicaa's own age. The goddess spoke softly in the darkened room, suggesting that the morning would be a fine time to go to the river. The household linens needed washing. The day would be warm. The river pools would be clear and inviting. The dream was gentle and practical, as dreams sometimes are. Nausicaa woke with the first gray light of dawn. The suggestion lingered in her mind like the scent of bread from a distant hearth. She rose and went to her father. She asked for a wagon and mules to carry the laundry to the river. The king smiled and agreed. He could see no reason to refuse. The handmaidens loaded the wagon with bundles of linen and wool. They packed a basket with food. Bread, olives, cheese wrapped in cloth. A skin of wine. Simple provisions for a day by the water. The mules stepped out through the palace gates, and the wagon rattled down the stone road toward the coast. The river met the sea in a wide, sheltered valley. Pools had formed along the bank where the current slowed, and the water there ran clear over smooth stones. Tall grasses grew along the edges. Willows trailed their branches in the shallows. The morning sun came slanting through the trees and turned the water gold. They unhitched the mules and let them wander in the soft grass by the bank. Then the work began. The young women carried the linens down to the washing pools. They waded in, the water cool around their ankles. They trod the fabric against the stones in the old way, pressing and turning, pressing and turning. The wool released its dust. The linen grew white again. When the washing was done, they spread the cloth across the warm rocks and the low bushes along the shore. The linen caught the sunlight and glowed. The wool steamed faintly as it dried. The river murmured past them, carrying small leaves and bright reflections. The afternoon opened before them like a gift. With the work finished, they ate. The bread was dense and good. The olives were dark and salt-cured. The cheese was mild. They passed the wineskin and sat in the dappled shadow of the willows. The light moved on the water. A kingfisher called from somewhere downstream. After the meal, they played. They tossed a ball between them, laughing softly, their voices carrying across the water. Nausicaa stood among them, taller than most, her hair catching the late afternoon light. The ball arced through the warm air. Their bare feet left prints in the damp sand. Not far from where they played, hidden beneath a canopy of olive branches, a man slept. He had crawled there the night before, broken by the sea. His skin was rough with dried salt. His hair was matted. Leaves covered him like a second skin. He had been sleeping the deep, heavy sleep of absolute exhaustion. The voices reached him through the layers of that sleep. They came to him slowly, like light filtering through water. High, clear voices, the sound of laughter. The splash of the ball landing in the shallows. He stirred beneath his blanket of olive leaves. Odysseus woke. He lay still for a moment, listening. The sounds were unmistakable, human voices, the living world. He had not heard such sounds in a very long time. He rose slowly, stiff in every joint. He covered himself as best he could with leafy branches, for he had nothing else. Then he stepped out of the thicket. The handmaidens saw him and stepped back. He was a rough sight, salt-crusted and hollow-eyed, a stranger emerging from the wild brush. They moved away, uncertain, their sandals quiet on the grass. But Nausicaa did not move. She stood where she was, steady as a young olive tree rooted in good soil. Her eyes were calm. She looked at the stranger with neither fear nor pity, but with something closer to recognition. Here was a person in need. That was enough. The wanderer spoke to her gently. His voice was hoarse from the sea. He told her he had been adrift and that the water had carried him here. He did not ask for much. Only the kindness of direction and perhaps something to wear. His words were careful and measured, the words of a man who understood how to speak to strangers. Nausicaa listened. When he had finished, she answered with the composure of someone twice her age. She told him where he was. She told him her father was the king. She called her handmaidens back and instructed them to bring food and fresh clothing. They brought him to a quiet bend in the river, away from the washing pools. They left him there with olive oil for his skin, clean linen, and a woolen cloak. He washed the salt from his body. The river water was cool and sweet after the endless brine. He dressed in the clean clothes. The linen was smooth against his skin. The cloak was warm. When he returned, the young women offered him bread and wine. He ate slowly, tasting each bite as though he had forgotten how food worked. The bread was soft. The wine was dark and warm. The olives had a richness that reminded him of home, though he did not say so. Nausicaa watched him eat with quiet satisfaction. She had done what was right, and she knew it. Hospitality was sacred in her country. A stranger at the threshold was a guest under the protection of the gods. There was no need for deliberation. There was only the simple act of offering what was needed. the afternoon light turned amber. The shadows of the willows lengthened across the water. The linen on the rocks had dried to a bright whiteness. The handmaidens began to fold the cloth and load it back onto the wagon. Their movements were unhurried, their voices soft. Nausicaa told the stranger how to find the palace. She described the road, the grove of poplars near the town, the fountain where he should wait. She told him to seek her mother, the queen, for it was the queen whose word carried the greatest weight in matters of hospitality. She spoke clearly, without hesitation, and the wanderer listened. She did not ride back with him. She went ahead with her handmaidens, the wagon rattling softly on the road. She knew that it would be better for him to arrive at the palace on his own. She was wise enough to think of these things. She was young enough not to make a show of it. The wanderer watched the wagon disappear down the road. The dust settled behind it. The river continued its quiet work beside him. He stood in his borrowed clothes and breathed the time-scented air of this unknown island. Somewhere in the orchards, a bird sang its evening song. He followed the road as she had described it. The poplars appeared just as she had said they would. The fountain was there, clear water rising from a stone basin. He knelt beside it and cupped the water in his hands. It tasted of nothing but itself, clean and cold and present. The twilight came on. The sky above the orchards deepened from gold to rose to the color of wine. The first stars appeared, faint as distant lamplight. The air cooled and carried with it the smell of wood smoke from the town, of bread baking, of hearth fires lit against the coming night. He rested by the fountain and let the stillness settle around him. The kindness of the princess stayed with him like warmth from an ember held close. In all his years of wandering, he had learned that the world was not only wind and wave, it was also this: a young woman standing firm, a clean cloak offered without conditions, bread and wine shared at a riverbank. The shadows deepened, the stars grew brighter. The smoke from the town rose in thin columns and disappeared into the darkness above. The world grew quiet. The fountain murmured its small, constant song. The mist crept in from the river and softened every edge. And in that softening, in that slow arrival of night over the island of the Phaeacians, everything began to still. The road was empty. The orchards were silent. The sea beyond the harbor breathed its long, slow breath against the shore. The wanderer closed his eyes and let the peace of the place hold him. His breathing steadied, his shoulders loosened, the day released its grip. The stars turned. The mist thickened. The darkness was kind, and the night, with all its depth and gentleness, carried him slowly, slowly into rest. And so the story rests for now. The fire has settled to embers. The wind has grown still. Somewhere the sea continues its ancient song, steady as breathing, patient as sleep. Let yourself drift. Let yourself rest. The story will be here when you return.